I'm Greg Devereaux, the Executive Director of the Washington Federation of State Employees. We represent 40,000 public sector state employee and public service employees. I want to thank Dwight very much for his leadership in having this panel. It's been a wonderful panel in my opinion, and I want to thank all of you for showing up on a holiday like this. As my predecessors, the Brendans, David and Simone, have indicated, there is a war on public employees and their unions in this country, and many different groups like ALEC are supplying the ammunition to prosecute that war. In 2011, 29 states introduced charter school and voucher legislation. 15 states passed them. 25 states introduced public sector collective bargaining reform. 13 states passed them. 17 states enacted negative changes to pension COLAs, and 15 passed legislation increasing employees' pension contributions. My own union has endured 12 furlough days for 2 years of the past 5. As mortgage payments, rent payments, the cost of gasoline, family health care costs, and the price of food have skyrocketed, state worker wages have stagnated since 2007. Over the past 5 years, the Washington State employee workforce has endured 3 zeros and 2 years of a 3% wage cut. The cost of health care for state employees has risen 25%, and new hires had early retirement factors stripped from their pensions last year by the legislature. Yes, the economy dictated many of these measures, but the depth of our sacrifice was magnified by ALEC and their allies. These relentless targeted attacks highlight the hard rights grand strategy, and Simone referenced this, but I want to underscore it. If they decimate public sector unions, they will put the overall labor movement on the ropes. With public sector, non-public sector, and education unions in free fall, electoral politics follows closely behind. Today, I don't want to dwell on what attacks have occurred. Instead, I want to highlight how we respond moving forward. In particular, and some of these have been mentioned, but I think they bear underscoring again, I think it's critical to focus on 3 strategies. First, recruiting worker-friendly candidates. The second is getting our individual houses in order, and the third strategy is developing a broad-based coalition movement that fundamentally understands that our economic, social justice, and political boats are all tied together. Each of these strategies is simple to identify, but take great effort to effect. Recruiting worker-friendly candidates should be a no-brainer, but too often in swing districts, we recruit or we tolerate what I would euphemistically call business Democrats. The Rodney Toms, the Tim Sheltons, and quite frankly, even the compromises of the Gregory administration have done tremendous harm to the Democratic Party brand. Second, what do I mean by getting our individual houses in order? It's no secret that the right went after public sector unions first in the Rust Belt. Their perception was that as the economies in those states were further hollowed out, public sector unions, which they believed to be weak to begin with in those states, could not withstand their onslaught. Unfortunately, their assumptions were correct in Michigan and Wisconsin. While the public protest in Wisconsin was massive, that mobilization was not able to muster the votes to take over the state Senate or to recall Walker. The AFSCME State Employee Council in Wisconsin, my equivalent, in the span of 2 years has gone from 24,000 members to 3,000 members. While many lessons can be learned from the campaigns run in those 2 states, it's obvious that the public sector unions in Wisconsin and Michigan need to rebuild their union member by emphasizing principles of workplace democracy and reliance on worker mobilization to regain their power. Fortunately, in Ohio, the right badly miscalculated. Public sector unions and the labor movement in general were very well organized and coordinated, and Kasich quickly realized his mistake. I highlight these examples because it is critically important for us to examine our own organizations internally to ensure that we have the capacity politically and organizationally to withstand such attacks. Thirdly, and just as critically, we must build broad-based coalitions that understand how our issues are interwoven and can act together for mutual benefit. What do I mean by that? You know, we've always worked in coalition on various things. We have to do it in a better way, in a much smarter way. Let me offer several examples. First, since 2000, the Washington State Legislature has passed more than 154 tax breaks, 27% of the total tax preferences in the state, granting more than $3 billion in tax exemptions in just the past 13 years. Outside the business community, few groups monitored the passage of these preferences. If the environmental, labor, education, social service, and similar communities had all mobilized their members around common themes and actions, it's more likely some of these tax preferences could have been stopped, thereby decreasing the overall revenue problem for the state budget. Secondly, as the first Brendan pointed out, the Center for Media and Democracy and such groups like the Color of Change have waged an aggressive, hard-hitting campaign to expose ALEC for what it truly is. Their strategies and tactics and renewed assistance from allies like the labor movement have directly resulted in, as Brendan mentioned, 43 corporations dropping their sponsorship of ALEC. As was true in the civil rights movement and in the fight for Medicare and Medicaid, different constituencies are beginning to realize that by themselves they may achieve limited victories, but in coalition they may win the war. In the labor movement, we need to look no further than the fate of the Employee Free Choice Act to see that we have not been powerful enough by ourselves to pass it. However, if other constituencies realize the long-term economic impact on their membership, we may muster the power to push it through. I do not underestimate the time and the effort it takes to do effective coalition building. On some issues like healthcare, we have demonstrated our collective resolve. But we need to fine-tune the message across all constituencies and create a massive echo chamber, just like the right has done on their issues. And that echo chamber has to be around fundamental rights. Since our individual fights in many cases have achieved only marginal victories, it seems only logical that aligned and coordinated as never before, together we will win more comprehensive victories. 3 years ago, no one foresaw the power of an Arab Spring. Instead of playing defense, it's time for workers in this country to create their own American Spring. Thank you.